Hi there. I'm Anitra. A few months ago, I wired $35,000 to save my father's life. No hesitation, no conditions. A week later, they cropped me out of the family photo, like I never existed. They called me unstable, said I gave money just to control them. My own mother used my name to apply for benefits I never asked for. And at a church gala, they put my face on a slideshow to raise money without asking me. But here's the thing. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the planning, the silence, the lies wrapped in scripture and pity. How does a family go from thank you to don't come back? And what happens when you stop being quiet? I wired the money on a Thursday morning. It wasn't a question, wasn't even a decision. Dad needed heart surgery, and there wasn't time for debate or delay. $35,000. That's what it cost. I emptied the last of my emergency fund, pushed the transfer through, and texted Lyle the confirmation. "Taken care of," I wrote. He replied with a thumbs-up emoji. That was it. No call, no thank you, no update, not even a damn receipt. At the time, I didn't think much of the silence. I told myself they were probably just overwhelmed, scared, exhausted, focused on recovery. My mother had always been the practical one. Emotions weren't her strong suit. Lyle? He only reached out when he needed something. That wasn't new. And me? I was the fixer. Always had been. Quietly patching holes in this family like a one-woman emergency crew. 1 week later, the silence grew louder. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was folding laundry in my apartment in Austin when a photo popped up on my feed. My cousin had posted it. A backyard party, balloons, barbecue, beer cans lined up like trophies. In the center of the group, my father stood smiling, fresh out of the hospital, arms wrapped around Charlene and Lyle, a cake shaped like a stethoscope in front of him. I wasn't there. I hadn't even known there was a party. Worse, my face was gone from a photo I knew had included me once, cropped out like I was a mistake. The rest of the comments were full of "Happy birthday, Wardell," and "So glad he's okay," followed by endless tagging. Everyone in that photo was tagged except me. I sat there, phone in hand, heart hammering behind my ribs like it wanted out. I refreshed the post. The tag was still missing. My name, erased, not by accident, by decision. I texted Lyle right away. "Why wasn't I invited to Dad's birthday?" He responded 5 minutes later. "Thought you were busy." That's it. 4 words to explain cutting me out of my own father's celebration after I'd just paid for the reason he was still breathing. Not sorry, not "we should have called," not even a weak excuse about the guest list being limited. Just that lazy lie. "Thought you were busy." I stared at the message until the words started to blur. I checked my call log. No missed calls, no messages, just digital silence from people who had once called me family. I called my mother, straight to voicemail, no return call. That night I couldn't sleep. My chest felt too tight. My mind kept replaying that image. Dad surrounded by smiling faces, celebrating life. My absence wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate, clean, cruel. By midnight, I found myself opening the old drawer under my nightstand. Inside were holiday cards, old birthday invitations, printed out emails with subject lines like "Family Game Night" and "Thanksgiving Menu." I hadn't realized how much I kept until that moment. I held a card from 2014, Thanksgiving in Tulsa. Back then, I was still the dependable daughter. The one who picked up groceries when Mom forgot, who ran errands for Lyle's kids when Charlene couldn't get out. The one who didn't complain. That version of me felt like a ghost. I pulled out my phone and opened the family calendar app we all used to share. Lyle had created it years ago so we could stay connected. I scrolled through events they had added in the past 2 weeks. Dad's recovery dinner, Knox BBQ bash, church brunch with Pastor Neil. Not a single mention sent to me. I stared at my own name on the list. There it was, Anitra Knox. Just a line. No photo, no contact. I deleted it. The screen asked, "Are you sure you want to leave this family calendar?" I tapped yes. Then I sat back in the dark and waited for the regret to kick in. It didn't. Not yet. All I felt was this eerie calm. Not relief, not pain. Just a clean, quiet shift. like something had clicked into place and could no longer be undone. The next morning, while sipping my coffee, I opened Facebook again. The post now had over 100 likes and 23 comments. Still no tag, still no message. I clicked into Lyle's profile, scrolling through his latest update. He'd captioned a photo of Dad blowing out candles with, "Resilience runs in our blood. Grateful for family. Grateful for unity." Unity. What a joke. I took a screenshot, just in case. Then I opened my budget app, pulled up the hospital transaction and labeled it personal loss. Because that's what it was. That money didn't buy gratitude. It didn't earn me a seat at the table. It paid for my exit. It started with a text message from Nora, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. I was clearing out my inbox on a slow Monday morning in April, trying to distract myself from the gnawing silence I still felt weeks after being cut out of Dad's birthday celebration. I hadn't expected closure from them, but I thought maybe they'd eventually reach out. Instead, what I got was something worse. Confirmation that they hadn't just erased me. They'd rewritten the story. Nora's message was short, polite, too polite. "Hey, not sure what's going on, but your mom mentioned you at Women's Prayer Circle. Just wanted to check in. You okay?" I stared at the screen, rereading the words. Nora lived in Tulsa. Same church my mom had been going to for years. Same circle of women who baked casseroles for funerals and whispered behind closed doors about who was going through something. I asked her plainly, "What exactly did she say?" Her reply came within a minute. "She said you've been having emotional struggles, that caring for your dad's health took a toll on you, and she told the group she was holding the family together after your breakdown." Breakdown. That word clung to my skin like oil. Sticky, staining. I didn't reply right away. I put the phone down and just sat there, blinking at nothing, trying to register the sharp pivot. They didn't thank me. They didn't invite me. And now, they were using me. I pulled up Facebook. My mother wasn't the type to post often, but when she did, it was always coded in that careful sweetness, something church-ready, soaked in religious platitudes. And there it was. A status posted 2 days ago. A photo of her hands folded in prayer and a caption. "Every family has that one child who loses their way. Please keep us in your prayers as we try to show her grace." I felt like someone had poured ice water into my chest. The comment section was full of sympathy. "Stay strong, Charlene. She'll come back to the light. You're such a good mother, always giving, even when it hurts. Praying for your prodigal daughter." And then I saw Lyle's comment. "She's trying, but she's not well. We're just taking it day by day." Not well? I wasn't the one inventing stories in front of a room full of strangers. I wasn't the one weaponizing someone's silence. But here I was, painted as unstable, fragile, broken. I called Lyle. He picked up on the second ring, sounding out of breath like I'd interrupted something important. "Hey," he said cautiously. "You want to tell me why Mom is out here saying I had a breakdown?" I asked, my voice tight but even. He sighed like this was all exhausting for him. "Anitra, don't make this a thing." "A thing?" I said, my tone sharpening. "You let her stand in a room full of people and use my name like a cautionary tale? You co-signed it in the comments." "She didn't name you." "Oh, come on. You know exactly who she was talking about." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Look, Mom's just doing her best. She's been through a lot. Dad's recovery hasn't been easy. You pulling away didn't help." "I didn't pull away. You pushed me out." "You're being dramatic." That word again. Dramatic. The go-to label for women who refuse to be walked over. "I paid for his surgery, Lyle," I said, voice low but unshaking. $35,000, and you all ghosted me. Then you turn around and say I'm unstable?" He didn't reply. So I hung up. No screaming, no threats, just a slow, definitive click. Later that night, I sat at my desk, opened a new folder on my laptop, and labeled it Truth Archive. Inside it, I saved screenshots of the prayer post, the comments, Nora's texts, and Lyle's reply. I backed them up on a flash drive too, not because I planned to go nuclear, not yet, but because I knew what this was. It was a pattern. People like them, people who operate behind a curtain of righteousness, don't need facts to destroy you. They just need repetition and silence. So I started building my own record. If they were going to rewrite the story, I was going to keep the receipts. 2 days later, I got an email from a woman named Claire, someone I barely knew from my parents' church. The subject line simply read, "Thinking of you." Inside it said, "I heard what your family's going through. Just know you're not alone. We all stumble sometimes. God still loves you." I closed the message without replying. I wasn't going to play into their theater. I wasn't going to be the sad daughter in need of saving. I wasn't going to be their redemption arc. I was going to be the record they couldn't erase. And this time, I wouldn't wait to be heard. I'd make sure the truth had its own timeline, one they couldn't manipulate with sympathy posts and church gossip. The next morning started like most others. Coffee, silence, and the hum of my apartment's AC cutting through the stillness. I'd barely taken a sip when the email arrived. The sender made my heart stop. Aileen, Lyle's ex-wife, the woman who used to bring deviled eggs to Thanksgiving and always offered to help clean up while the rest of the family disappeared into the living room. We hadn't spoken in almost a year, not since she packed up her things and left him. Subject? "You need to see this." That was all it said. Attached was a forwarded email. I hesitated before opening it. My palms were already damp, nerves pulsing in my wrists like I could feel the lie before reading it. It was from Charlene, sent 2 months before Dad's surgery. "Once the money clears, we shift. She's not part of the long term. Let her react how she wants. If it gets messy, we say she's unstable. People will understand. Trust me." My breath left my lungs so hard it felt like I'd been punched. It wasn't vague. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was strategy. I wasn't written out. I was never written in. Everything I doubted, the ghosting, the prayer posts, the photos, the fake concern, it all lined up. It wasn't passive neglect. It was a decision made in advance. Cold, calculated. I stared at the screen for a full minute. The words didn't blur. They etched themselves deeper with every second. Let her react how she wants. I whispered the line out loud. They expected me to panic, to lash out, to look unstable. I hit download and saved the email directly to the Truth Archive folder, then printed a copy and placed it in the expanding binder on my desk. I labeled it Charlene_Feb 2023. I texted Aileen, "Call when you can." She rang within 5 minutes. "Hey," she said softly. "I wasn't sure if I should send it, but after what I saw online—" "You did the right thing," I cut in. "How long have you known?" A pause, then a sigh. "I saw it back when I was still living with Lyle. He didn't hide much, just assumed I wouldn't care. But I did. I asked Charlene why they were excluding you. She smiled and said, 'Not everything needs to be shared with Anitra.'" I closed my eyes. I remembered that Thanksgiving. Aileen had sat beside me and whispered, "You okay?" I thought she was just being polite. I had no idea she already knew. "I asked Lyle too," she continued. "He got defensive, told me to mind my place, said I didn't understand family dynamics. After that, things got weird. They stopped inviting me to anything family-related. Charlene told me if I kept defending you, I should find somewhere else to spend the holidays." I swallowed the rage building in my chest. "And that's why you left?" "Part of it. I couldn't sit there and pretend anymore." There was a moment of silence between us, not awkward, just thick with everything we hadn't said before. "I should have told you earlier," Aileen said finally. "I'm sorry." "You're the only one who did anything at all," I replied. When we hung up, I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I opened my notebook and started a new page. People who knew. People who stayed silent. People who benefited. I began listing names. It wasn't just Charlene or Lyle. There were cousins who posted party pics without tagging me, friends of the family who commented under my mother's passive-aggressive Facebook updates. Even Claire, the woman who emailed me out of nowhere offering sympathy for whatever I was going through. They weren't just complicit. They were part of the system. This wasn't a rupture. It was a structure, one built long before I noticed the cracks. I added a second page. Actions taken. Truth Archive. Active screenshots. Backed up twice. Printed email. Physical copy. Aileen, direct witness. I sat back in my chair, holding the printed email in my hand like it weighed more than a single sheet of paper. If I ever doubted it before, I whispered, now I knew. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't hurt feelings. This was design. It wasn't about making things better anymore. It was about making things clear. 2 mornings later, I was rinsing a cup in the sink when my phone buzzed on the counter. I grabbed it with one hand, expecting a delivery update. But no, of course not. It was from Lyle. Hey, Mom said rent's tight this month. Think you can help cover? No greeting. No, how are you? No acknowledgement of the fundraiser, or the birthday I'd been excluded from, or the latest church gossip. Just a request, casual and clinical, like nothing had happened. I stared at the text for a full minute, letting it just sit there. My knuckles went white around the ceramic. I didn't even have to think. My thumbs moved before I consciously told them to. You still think I'm your ATM? I watched the typing dots appear, then disappear. He didn't answer, and maybe that was the answer. I set the phone down and opened my laptop, thinking maybe, just maybe, I could distract myself by paying a few lingering medical bills tied to Dad's surgery. I'd set up a login with the hospital's payment system months ago when I transferred the funds directly. I figured if nothing else, I could download a final receipt for tax records. But the dashboard wouldn't load. Access denied. I tried again, same result. I double-checked the password, clicked reset. Nothing. Frustrated but calm, I picked up the phone and called the hospital billing office. A woman with a clipped voice and a Midwestern accent answered, "Billing, this is Lori." I gave her my name, my dad's patient ID, and the account number I had saved. After a brief hold, she came back. "Oh, this account's been reassigned. You're not listed as the primary anymore." I blinked. "What? That's not possible. I funded the entire procedure. From my account." "Yeah, it looks like the primary contact was updated on April 10th. Charlene Knox is listed now." I almost dropped the phone. "Can you tell me who changed it?" "I'm sorry, ma'am. I can't disclose that. Privacy policy." "Can you at least tell me if the change was initiated from her end?" "I really can't say." I thanked her, somehow politely, and hung up. My stomach churned as I reopened the app on my phone. The transfer from my account was still there. $35,000, Knox Medical Center. But in the hospital's system, I didn't even exist. I sat down hard on the edge of the couch and stared at the floor. I paid the bill. And now, I wasn't even listed on the receipt. That wasn't just disrespect. That was a move, a quiet one, surgical. The kind of erasure you only do if you're confident no one will fight back. I called Charlene, straight to voicemail. I didn't yell. I didn't ramble. I just left a message. "Hi, it's Anitra. I tried logging into the hospital account and it says I'm no longer listed. Did you make that change? Please let me know." I didn't expect a response, but I wanted the record to show I asked. After the call, I pulled my notebook from the drawer and flipped to the back. A fresh page. A new phase. Truth Archive, Phase 2. I wrote it at the top in red ink this time. Then I began logging everything. The date of Lyle's text, the blocked hospital login, the call to billing, the voicemail to Charlene underneath it. I wrote one line in all caps. "They don't just want my money, they want my silence." I opened a new folder in Google Drive and labeled it the same, Phase 2. Inside, I uploaded screenshots of the transaction from my bank, the denial screen from the hospital portal, and my note from the call. Let them rewrite what they wanted. I would record what they couldn't. They built their story on whispers. I was building mine on paper. I wasn't collecting pity. I was collecting proof. The next morning, after barely 4 hours of sleep, I took my coffee black and sat down in front of my laptop. The apartment was still, save for the occasional hum of the refrigerator. No TV, no music, just focus. I wasn't interested in revenge. I wasn't plotting to burn everything down. But I was done pretending this wasn't a coordinated effort. And that's when I got the first message of the day, from Melissa, a former friend from Mom's church circle, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. The kind of person who posted daily Bible quotes but never replied to direct messages. Her message read, Just wanted you to know, your mom's been saying some stuff about you in the women's circle group. Thought you should see this. Attached was a screenshot. Charlene. Anitra's always had control issues. That money she gave us? Just another leash. She's always been difficult. Then Lyle chimed in. She thinks throwing cash earns her a seat at the table. But family isn't bought, it's earned. I blinked. Earned? As if I hadn't bailed them out of a crisis they couldn't handle. As if I wasn't the only one who stepped up while they acted like victims. I scrolled back up and read Charlene's words again. Control issues. No, I didn't pay to control them. I paid because they had no one else. I paid to keep my father alive. But they didn't want to remember that part. I took a screenshot, then another. Saved them in phase 2 of the Truth Archive. Subfolder, Narrative Control. It stung more than I thought it would. Not because I believed them, but because I knew others would. That afternoon, I got another message, this time from my cousin Clarice. She was the only one who still checked in without an agenda. We'd grown up riding bikes and catching fireflies during summers in Tulsa. She still called me Nini, like she did when we were kids. Her message came with a PDF attachment. I thought you should see this. I didn't agree with it, but I didn't know how to speak up either. I'm sorry. It was a scanned copy of the revised family will. I opened it, heart already pounding. In Section 3, Beneficiaries and Allocations, my name appeared not under the direct heirs list, but further down. Conditional beneficiaries, subject to parental discretion. Those exact words, no fixed percentage, no assets listed. Just a vague clause that legally meant, we'll decide later, if we feel like it. I hadn't asked for an inheritance, but reading it like that, like I was an afterthought, hurt more than I expected. They wanted me erased, legally, socially, financially. So I called Rowena. She was a former roommate from law school, now a family attorney with a reputation for being direct and unapologetic. The kind of woman you didn't hire unless you were serious. She answered on the second ring. About time, she said, skipping pleasantries. What's going on? I explained everything, the will, the messages, the hospital access, the smears. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, there was silence on the line. Then, Anitra, this isn't just bad parenting. This is calculated isolation. You're being boxed out on every front. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. So what do I do? You start by documenting every instance, and you make one thing clear. You won't be their scapegoat. Not quietly. We hung up, and I went back to my desk. That evening, I typed out a message. I didn't send it in anger. I sent it in full clarity. Group text, Lyle, Charlene. Let's make something clear. I don't need to be included. I don't want anything from you. But if you keep spreading lies about my intentions, my mental state, or my character, I will respond. Publicly. And I have proof. Every word, every edit, every attempt to twist the truth has been documented. I paused. I suggest you tread carefully. Not because I'm vindictive, but because I'm tired. Tired of being the only one who knows what really happened. No response. Not a single word. And that silence told me everything. They didn't want peace, they wanted power. And they thought if they just ignored me long enough, I'd go away. But silence wasn't safety anymore. It was a weapon. One I was no longer going to let them use. I'd given them space to come clean. I'd given them room to apologize. I'd even given them the benefit of the doubt, longer than most would. But now I gave them warning. 2 mornings later, as I sat sipping lukewarm coffee at my kitchen counter, an email pinged in. Subject, pending application action required. It was from the Texas Department of Human Services. For a second, I thought it was a phishing scam. Until I clicked in. The body read, Dear applicant, we're reaching out regarding your request for emergency housing and food assistance. Your application is incomplete. Please log into your account to finish the verification process. I blinked at the screen, rereading the line about my request. I hadn't applied for anything. Not now. Not ever. Confused, I clicked the verification link. Security questions I never set. A recovery phone number I didn't recognize. Something was off. I called the hotline listed at the bottom, waited 30 minutes to speak to someone. When the representative finally answered and pulled up the application tied to my name and social security number, my breath caught. The listed residential address? My parents' house. I didn't need a DNA test to know who did this. They weren't just sabotaging my reputation now, they were stealing my identity. I ended the call politely. Then I stood up, dumped the cold coffee, and marched to my desk. There are moments when you cry, and there are moments when you print forms. I chose the second. I downloaded the Renunciation of Inheritance and Legal Association form from a legal document service. I filled in every line myself in bold ink. No lawyer needed, no ceremony. I, Anitra R. Knox, hereby reject and relinquish any claim to the estate, property, or financial designations associated with the estates of Charlene Knox and Wardell Knox. It went on, covering any future claims, any false attachments, but the final line was the one that mattered. Effective immediately and irrevocably. I drove to a local notary office just off I-35, a strip mall squeezed between a vape shop and a Vietnamese bakery. The guy behind the counter barely glanced at me as he stamped the form. By noon, 3 certified copies were on their way. 1 to my mother, 1 to my father, 1 to their estate attorney. Then I logged into the Texas Attorney General's fraud reporting portal and submitted a formal complaint. I attached the email, the call notes, a timeline of my residency, and proof that I hadn't lived at their address for years. If Charlene wanted to play with government forms, she'd now have to play with state investigators too. That afternoon, I sat on the couch and stared at my muted TV. No messages came in. No calls. No knock at the door. But for the first time in this entire disaster, I didn't interpret the silence as rejection. I wasn't waiting for them to explain anymore. I had made my own exit, and I didn't feel small. I felt intact. I called Rowena later that day, told her everything. She said simply, "Good. That's how you protect yourself." Then she walked me through the next steps, updating my own will, assigning power of attorney to someone I trusted, removing Charlene and Wardell from every emergency contact list they'd once been on. "This is you drawing the line," she said. "No, this is me moving the line," I replied. "Out of their reach." It wasn't about revenge. I didn't need to hurt them back. I just needed to make sure they couldn't use my name, my existence, as a tool for gain or guilt ever again. Before I went to bed, I opened the Truth Archive, created a new folder, Phase 3, Exit Strategy. I uploaded PDFs of the notarized letter, the fraud complaint, and my updated legal designations. I didn't do it because I planned to fight them. I did it because I no longer needed to explain myself. Not to them, not to anyone. They could twist every memory, burn every bridge, lie through their teeth at the next church fundraiser. I was done handing them rope. I had cut myself loose. It started with a video link sent by a former classmate from Tulsa. No subject, no message, just the URL. I tapped it, not expecting anything. Maybe another vague post about family unity or a dig cloaked in a Bible verse. What loaded was worse. The caption read, "Knox Family Resilience Night Full Program." It was a recording from a local church auditorium, clearly packed. A banner hung overhead with the words, "Faith Through Storms," stitched in glittery gold. I watched as Charlene stood at the podium, hands clasped in exaggerated prayer. Her voice trembled as she began to speak. "I ask that you all pray for our family. We've faced loss this year, not just in health, but in spirit. Our daughter, she's chosen a different path." The camera cut to a few faces nodding, misty-eyed. "She's battling things we don't understand, career pressure, emotional confusion, but we don't hate her. We love her through it." Applause, donations, a standing ovation for a woman who'd called me delusional behind closed doors. I watched in disbelief as they turned my absence into a charity case, a pity project. They made my silence look like sickness, and theirs like sainthood. That night I barely slept, not out of rage, but from calculation. I didn't react publicly. I didn't rush to post a rebuttal or send angry texts. Instead, I opened the Truth Archive and clicked New Folder, Stagecraft. I uploaded the video, downloaded a transcript, saved screenshots of the fundraiser page. Then I wrote a new note. They sold my distance as a death. I'm still here, just not where they can reach me. A few days later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I let it go to voicemail, it turned out to be from the front desk at my old therapist's clinic in Austin. The receptionist said a doctor had called to verify some information Charlene had shared during her recent visit. She mentioned your name, said you had a history of erratic behavior, delusions, even aggression. I froze. She was trying to stain my record, to leave a paper trail of instability. If that note made it into a file, it could resurface in a background check, a job screening, or worse. I thanked the clinic for letting me know, then hung up and added a new tab to the archive. Medical defamation. Still, I didn't pick up the phone to scream at her. Instead, I called Rowena. Calm, clear. She paused, then said, "You know we could move this forward now." I said, "No, let them think I'm still licking my wounds." Rowena exhaled. "That's restraint most people wouldn't manage." "It's not restraint," I told her. "It's precision. They're playing for attention. I'm playing for accountability." The next hit came via an old friend, Marissa, who had stopped texting me back after all this began. Out of nowhere, she forwarded me a screenshot of a message thread. "Lyle, I'm telling you, she's not in a good place. Be careful. I wouldn't engage. She lashes out when cornered." Another message. "She's paranoid. We love her, but it's best to keep space." They were painting me as a threat, not just unstable, dangerous. I scrolled through Marissa's message again, trying to feel hurt, but all I felt was clarity. This wasn't just a smear campaign anymore. It was isolation warfare. Keep her out of the room. Keep her out of the photos. Now, keep her out of people's lives. They were cutting me out of the narrative so completely that if I ever reappeared, they could pretend I was the villain crashing the story. So I did the only thing I could. I documented it all. Private Google Drive folders weren't enough anymore. I encrypted everything onto 2 hard drives, one for me, one with Rowena. Then I started drafting a formal statement. Not for Facebook, not even for the press, but for court, if that ever came. It wasn't angry, it wasn't emotional, it was factual. This happened, on this day, at this time, to this woman, me. The more they spun their lies, the quieter I became. Not because I was weak, because I was preparing. Let them cry on stages and whisper in clinics. Let them weaponize pity like a sermon. I wasn't going to match their drama with noise. I was going to end it with facts. The invitation didn't come directly. It slid into my inbox through a forwarded email, a glossy newsletter from the Knox Foundation. Bright, over-designed, crammed with pastel gradients and serif fonts pretending to be elegant. The subject line read, "An evening of gratitude and community healing." I didn't have to guess who they were trying to heal. The event was held at the downtown Tulsa Convention Center, the kind of place where business expos and cheerleading competitions take turns occupying the same square footage. Tonight, it was transformed, or at least dressed up to feel that way. Soft golds and navy blues hung from fabric drapes. Folding chairs had ribbons. There were banners fluttering near the ceiling that read things like "Family First," "Faith over Fear and Broken," not lost in curly fonts that looked like they belonged on church bulletins. I didn't RSVP. I didn't check in at the front desk or pin a name tag on my chest. I showed up, quietly, without warning, just to see what kind of theater they were staging this time. Rowena came with me. She didn't speak, didn't offer sympathy, just walked beside me with her briefcase in one hand and her phone already unlocked in the other. Always ready. From a distance, we blended in. 2 more professionals in understated cocktail dresses, heels clicking on the concrete, faces neutral. A few people glanced our way but didn't recognize us, or didn't want to. Inside, I spotted Charlene immediately. She was already working the room, hands gently gripping forearms, faces pulled into soft expressions. She wore a pale blue blazer, pearl earrings, and her hair done in those effortless curls that take 2 hours and a salon to pull off. Her makeup was barely there, designed to say I'm vulnerable, but I showed up anyway. A mic was passed to her. The room dimmed. She took the stage with a practiced fragility, her shoulders rising with a deep, steadying inhale. "I'm not here tonight for pity," she said, her voice warm and just slightly cracked. "I'm here because families, real families, don't give up on each other, even when it's hard, even when someone strays." She paused. Let the silence work for her. Then she nodded toward the tech table, and the slideshow began. Photos flickered across the massive screen behind her. Charlene sitting by Wardell's hospital bed, her hand in his. Charlene hugging Lyle in a sunlit kitchen. Charlene lighting a candle at some fundraiser I hadn't been invited to. Each image timed perfectly with the music, a sentimental piano loop you'd hear in a pharmaceutical ad. And then, me. There I was, smiling, holding Dad's hand at the hospital, a photo I didn't remember anyone taking, let alone one I'd signed off on for public display. Beneath the image a caption read, "We lost her to stress, but we believe in her return." The room sighed, a few gasps, a tear or two. Heads shook in knowing sympathy. They had turned me into a ghost, a quiet tragedy they'd had to endure. Not the woman they cut off, not the person they blamed, pushed out, lied about. I was the sacrificial daughter, the one who cracked under pressure and had to be mourned prematurely so they could move on with the more palatable narrative. Next to me, Rowena's jaw tensed. She didn't speak, didn't need to. Then, right as the applause began and they passed around donation bins wrapped in ribbon, my phone buzzed. A text. It was from Sasha, a former coworker, someone I hadn't heard from in months. She'd moved back to Tulsa recently, after a divorce. She sent a photo. Lyle was in it, standing by the buffet table, deep in conversation with a couple who looked halfway interested. Then a follow-up message. "He's saying you're unstable, that they had to cut you out of the family plan for safety." I blinked. Family plan? I opened my insurance app and tried to log in. Access denied. I tried again, same result. My fingers were already numb before I pulled up the provider's customer service number and stepped outside. The Tulsa heat wrapped around me like wool, thick, unrelenting, hard to breathe through. When the operator finally picked up, I didn't waste time. "Hi, yeah, I need to confirm my health coverage. Name is Anitra Knox. Can you tell me if my policy is still active?" There was typing, a pause, then a slow, apologetic exhale from the woman on the line. "Ma'am, your account was closed last fall. We sent notice to the policyholder on file." "Who was the policyholder?" "Wardell Knox." I stared straight ahead, past the tinted doors and chandeliers, into the dark parking lot. "He removed your name on September 14th. September 14th, 3 weeks before Charlene stood in front of her church, collecting donations under the claim that I was carrying the financial burden of Wardell's care." I ended the call and stood still, lips pressed tight. It wasn't just that they'd erased me. It wasn't just that they lied. They did it while using my name to get sympathy, donations, approval. They buried me and then sent out invites for the funeral. Rowena stepped beside me, phone already at her ear. "We're filing. Cease and desist for defamation. I'm attaching the insurance records under fraud and misrepresentation. They used your image for financial gain under false pretenses. It's textbook." I nodded once. No tears, no trembling, just rage sharpening into action. I pulled my backup flash drive from my clutch. It held everything. Emails, voicemails, screenshots, memos, copies of Dad's prescriptions I'd paid out of pocket when they said they couldn't find the right card. All of it. "I'm also emailing the Tulsa Chronicle," I said. "I went to school with someone who edits the community page." Rowena raised an eyebrow. "We publishing the whole thing?" "Not yet. Just enough truth to clear the air they keep choking." Back inside, the event was in full swing. The lights glittered. Dessert was served in tiny glass cups with gold spoons. Charlene raised her champagne flute with perfect posture and a beatific smile. "To restoration," she said, the crowd echoing back the word. I opened Twitter, typed one line. "If you're going to lie in public using my name, expect the truth to meet you there." I hit post. Then I turned to Rowena, slipping my phone back into my clutch. "Let's go." She didn't argue, just gave a small nod. "Next move?" "We wait," I said, glancing back through the open doors. Already the ripple had started, buzzing phones lighting up across the ballroom, faces shifting from joy to confusion to concern. They wanted a show. Now they've got one. The next morning, I didn't check the news. I didn't refresh Twitter. I didn't open my inbox to scan for responses. Instead, I walked to my desk, opened my laptop, and sat in silence while the soft morning sun spilled through the blinds. It was the first morning in months where my hands didn't shake as I typed my password. A notification blinked in the corner. One new message from Rowena. Subject: cease and desist. Final update. Her email was short and clinical, but in its own way, beautiful. Charlene and Lyle have acknowledged receipt and signed confirmation. Your name has been removed from all family-linked documents and materials. The insurance provider has restored your personal record and sealed the fraudulent change. Their attorney responded with no further dispute. That was it. No apology, no retraction, but no more attacks either. It was over. Not because they admitted wrong, but because I stopped giving them places to reach me. I closed the email and leaned back in my chair, exhaling like I hadn't in weeks, maybe months. There was nothing left to burn. Later that afternoon, while clearing spam from my inbox, one message stood out. A name I didn't recognize, Monica R. The subject line, just, thank you. I opened it, half expecting another passive-aggressive dig or veiled sermon, but it wasn't. It was a single paragraph. You don't know me, but I used to work at your mother's clinic. I saw how things were framed. I couldn't say anything at the time, but I watched how you held your ground. You didn't scream or collapse. You just stood. Quiet strength matters. I hope you're okay. Thank you for standing up when others couldn't. I stared at the screen for a long while. Then I moved the message into a new folder I hadn't created until now. Letters that matter. No reply was needed. The thank you wasn't for dialogue. It was for acknowledgement. And after everything I'd been through, that was more than enough. By the following week, I'd started volunteering at a local women's resource center in East Austin. Most of the women were in their early 20s, many first-gen college students navigating paperwork and fear, and 1,000 unanswered questions. I worked with a girl named Giselle, who reminded me of myself at that age. Smart, observant, afraid to take up space. We sat side by side as I helped her edit her scholarship essay. Halfway through, she looked at me and asked, "What happened to your family?" It wasn't nosy, it wasn't judgmental, just a quiet curiosity from someone still learning how truth lives in shadows. I thought for a second, then smiled. They taught me how not to disappear. And that was all I said. Some stories don't need to be replayed in every room. Some truths belong in the vaults we build, not for revenge, but for peace. On my last evening of the month, I returned home after a long shift at the center. I made tea, fed my cat, and sat in my office to review a few notes. On the wall beside my desk, I had replaced the old family photo with something else weeks ago. A print of a sunrise over the Tulsa skyline. No people. Just morning light over a place that held too many endings and not enough beginnings. I looked at it as the sky outside turned the same color. Then I opened my journal and wrote one final entry under the tab labeled Exit Strategy. Not all bridges are meant to be rebuilt. Some are meant to remind you where not to return, but forward, that's where the light is. And with that, I closed the journal. Not a door slammed, not a grudge carried, just a page turned. Maybe you've been there too, the quiet black sheep, the one who gave too much, forgave too often, and stayed too long. I used to think family meant endurance, enduring shame, manipulation, and silence just to belong. But I've learned something. Love without respect is not love. Family without honesty is not family. And peace that costs your voice is not peace, it's submission. If I could leave you with one truth, it's this. You are allowed to walk away from people who rewrite your worth. You are allowed to start over without apologizing, and you don't need to be included to matter. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to quietly reclaim yourself. So now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to choose between family and your own sanity? If this story hit close to home, drop a 1 in the comments, or tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't resonate, that's okay too. Let me know why. Let's talk about it. This space is for real stories, real people, and real healing. And hey, if this video touched something in you, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We've got more stories coming your way that speak to truth, strength, and second chances, because no one should feel alone in a fight for their dignity. Thank you for watching, and remember, you are not invisible. You are not erased. You're just getting started.